Auburn Airport is, when you look at the alignment of those runways, I believe it's 1836, my house is kind of a focal point for when they intercept, they make that dog leg to get onto final, and you're gonna have all those houses, I believe they're gonna be right there, fairly in line with the extended runway. And I don't know if that impacts the use of that airport. I don't have, a long time ago I was an air traffic controller in the military, and it's been so long, I just don't remember some of those, the FAA circulars and all that type of thing. But, you know, the airport economic development is extremely important to Lee County and the state of Alabama. So you can't get land back once you give it away and allow it to be built on. And I'm a proponent of being able to use my land, but I like to make sure that it's being used wisely, and is that the best use. I understand that the developer wants to develop his land, but I think there's more consideration than just our neighborhood. That potential flight path. At any rate, I just wanted to bring that up and make sure that the concerns of the airport and its use would be met. Thank you very much for your time.
Anyone else?
So, my name's Eddie Hickson. I live at 764 Mooresville Drive. And I just want to add to the other concerns of the Mooresville neighborhood. My house is situated on, obviously, Mooresville Drive. 764 is right at the freeway stop, right before the creek, where the Mooresville Bridge is. So I have a front row seat to the traffic situation in the Mooresville neighborhood as it exists right now. And you sit, I'll invite any of you, you have an open invitation, come sit in my driveway and watch those stop signs being run all day, every day. So if we add another 120 cars to the back of the neighborhood, you can see that stop sign run even more all day, every day. And I talked to Mr. Delaney a number of years ago about the problem, and he informed me that another gentleman said there had been a traffic study, and at that time, excuse me, they looked at the possibility of speed bumps that exist in other neighborhoods around Auburn, and the amount of traffic to justify it at that time. But if the connector's made, I mean, it's just inevitable. The traffic is going to increase down again, as other gentleman said, a street with a lot of line curves, a lot of hills. You know, if I'm sitting in front of my house looking at the road, coming down the hill from Riverwood, it's a long bend, a long line curve. People, like I said, frequently run the stop sign from that direction. Also up the hill of Hayden Drive, it goes into Hannahbrook, where Mr. Ham, our former mayor, lives, right down the hill. Anyway, from all directions, all day, every day, people run those stop signs. I've called police many times. They've always been very kind, and they said, we'll send a unit, and they have. But you know, you can put black and white there 24/7 and probably fund city government off the tickets. So, if you're looking for revenue measures, it's a suggestion. No, but in all seriousness, the traffic situation, as I see it, from my front yard is not good, not safe, and not getting better, and will only get worse if this connector is put in. And I will say, I moved to Auburn about 4.5 years ago from a larger city for the quality of life. I love living in Auburn. I love my neighborhood. And I'm not against growth. I'm a capitalist, but I'll also, you have to be smart with how you grow and how you develop appreciate y'all's consideration, myself and the others from the neighborhood. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Good evening, I'm Ron Evans, 542 Jasmine Lane. That's in the Riverwood section of the North Mill subdivision. This is my first time to do this, so I may be a little shaky here.
It's our first time too.
First, I want to say that I'm in agreement with all the previous speakers, and in fact, the lady who just spoke added some new information that I found interesting that I was unaware of. But one of the things that struck me from the last meeting we had, it seemed that this connectivity issue grew out of some previous road plan that had been designed for this area many years ago before there were any subdivisions there, where connectivity may have been a nice thing for commercial development in the area. That hasn't worked out. It's all residential area except for that one section on Champions Boulevard, Champions Avenue. We didn't see that as a very good reason to require connectivity of this developer. In fact, it seemed kind of strange that we were kind of defending the developer's plan. Usually at these meetings, I think they're attacking those plans, but this developer seems to have put some thought into at least the interest and egress for his development. So none of us, at least I haven't met anybody yet who is for this connectivity, even though, as it was explained to us, that would give 2 exits from both of these subdivisions, but we've never needed 2 exits before. Most people moved into this subdivision because it was a series of cul-de-sacs and inroads, not thoroughfares. And I'm sure the people who move into the development, if it is passed, you do rezone for that. And the other strange thing was the fact that since this issue was, this connectivity issue was developed by some staff of the city, I was under the impression that there was nobody to counteract that if it was not a good idea. It was presented to the planning commission that they had to go along with it. I would hope that this council would have the capability or the ability to influence that in some way or another. That if you guys don't think it's a good idea, then the planning commission could be convinced of that and wouldn't require this developer to put something in that he didn't plan to put in and that we don't want to do. But thank you very much.
Anyone else? Jim?
Under City Manager's communication this evening, we have item 8A1, which is the announcement of 1 vacancy on the Public Parks and Recreation Board for a term beginning December 19th, 2018 and ending December 18th, 2024. Item 8A2 is the announcement of 1 vacancy on the Auburn Downtown Redevelopment Authority. The unexpired term begins immediately and ends July 18th, 2021. Item 8A3 is the announcement of 2 vacancies on the Green Space Advisory Board. 1 unexpired term begins immediately and ends August 7th, 2019. The other unexpired term begins immediately and ends August 7th, 2022. Under ordinances this evening, we have item 9A1, which establishes 3 stop signs in the East Richland subdivision.
I'll introduce the ordinance and ask for unanimous consent.
Second. Anyone on the council have a problem moving forward with this vote this evening?
I just have one quick question. Who requested the stop signs? Is that the city or is that citizen input?
Those are done by city professional staff, the traffic engineering staff.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, Lindsay?
Dawson,
Yes, ma'am.
Dixon,
Yes.
Rich Taylor,
Yes.
Griswold,
Yes.
Kobe, Parsons,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes, ma'am.
Witten,
Yes.
Ander.
Yes.
Item 9A2 establishes 3 stop signs in the West Richland subdivision.
I'll introduce ordinance and ask unanimous consent.
Second?
Anyone on the council have a problem moving forward with this vote? If not, Lindsay?
Dixon,
Yes.
Fitch Taylor,
Yes.
Griswold,
Yes.
Cody,
Yes.
Parsons, Smith,
Yes, ma'am.
Witten,
Yes.
Dawson,
Yes, ma'am.
Andrews.
Yes.
Item 9A3 establishes one stop sign in the Oaks at Cotswold subdivision Phase 4.
I'll introduce the ordinance and ask for unanimous consent.
Second. Anyone on the council have a problem moving forward with this vote this evening? Lindsay?
Fitch Taylor,
Yes.
Griswold,
Yes.
Cody,
Yes, ma'am.
Parsons,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Witten,
Yes.
Dawson,
Yes, ma'am.
Dixon,
Yes.
Andrews.
Yes.
Item 9A4 establishes one stop sign in the Donahue Ridge subdivision Phase 4.
I'll introduce the ordinance and ask for unanimous consent.
Second. Anyone on the council have a problem moving forward with this particular vote tonight? If not, Lindsay?
Griswold,
Yes.
Cody,
Yes.
Parsons,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes, ma'am.
Witten,
Yes.
Dawson,
Yes, ma'am.
Dixon,
Yes.
Fitch Taylor,
Yes.
Andrews.
Yes.
Item 9A5 establishes one stop sign for the cottage homes at East University Drive subdivision.
I'll introduce ordinance and ask unanimous consent.
Second.
Anyone on the council have a problem moving forward with this vote tonight? Any questions? Lindsay?
Cody,
Yes, ma'am.
Parsons,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes, ma'am.
Witten,
Yes.
Dawson,
Yes, ma'am.
Dixon,
Yes.
Fitch Taylor,
Yes.
Griswold,
Yes, ma'am.
Andrews.
Yes.
And the last of our stop signs, item 9A6, establishes two stop signs in the Ashton Lake subdivision Phase 3C.
I'll introduce the ordinance and ask for unanimous consent.
Second. Anyone on the council have a problem moving forward with this vote tonight? Lindsay?
Parsons,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Witten,
Yes.
Dawson,
Yes, ma'am.
Dixon,
Yes.
Fitch Taylor,
Yes.
Griswold,
Yes.
Cody, Andrews.
Yes.
Item 9B is Parker Lewis requesting to rezone 9.9 acres from rural to development district housing on property located east of Riverwood Drive and west of Champions Boulevard. This item is unanimously recommended for approval by the Planning Commission. This is the second reading.
Jim, with this being the second reading, tell me again, what are our procedures up here tonight?
So it would just, someone would move to adopt it, someone would second, and then you have a roll call vote.
No discussion?
Okay, we'll be discussing.
And you have discussion. After you move and second, then you have discussion.
I'll introduce ordinance and ask for approval.
Second.
Okay. Any questions for the council?
I got a question for Jim. Why, all right, I know this is just for the zoning, changing the zoning. I don't see any reason to deny that, but why do we have to allow this connection to Riverside?
So I'll let Forrest answer that. Just to clarify, the preliminary plat approval will be considered by the Planning Commission on Thursday. The developer, the way he has submitted the preliminary plat, does not have a connection shown on that preliminary plat. The staff has recommended to the Planning Commission that for traffic flow and things like that, that be connected. I'll let Forrest tell you more about from that perspective.
Thank you.
Well, the premise behind connectivity is, first of all, it's very rare that you'll see an instance where the city's not going to seek connectivity. That's one of the major things our public works folks in particular examine when we see subdivision proposals, are looking for, knowing, particularly when you're developing subdivisions where there's vacant land adjacent, where you have stub outs. For example, there's a stub out to the property that was put there, knowing that at some point there would be a desire to connect it. It's also going to be a very rare occasion that you propose a connection and anybody around the connection is going to like it. So it's a very common issue that we deal with on a regular basis. You know, we've had cases in this city, quite frankly, where there were some very key opportunities that were missed for connections that staff had recommended, and we can point to a number of them, but certainly DeKalb Street is one. Ross Street is another. When you go north on Ross and you know you dead into Ross Park and you gotta make a left or right, those are issues that as the city grows, it inhibits and it stresses our traffic infrastructure. So to the extent that we have the ability to leverage the opportunities to provide connections, we distribute those trips, which enhances our traffic infrastructure and delays the necessity to make continued investment in that, which is particularly important in a city like ours that is growing at the rate that we are. So this is a very common issue that we have to deal with, and obviously this is just the most recent example of that.
But if the developer doesn't want it and the citizens don't want it, we're just pursuing it because we think it's the best for traffic flow.
Well, and, this is not gonna be popular information to share, but, back in Riverwood, it's a pretty far way to get out of Riverwood. You gotta go all the way out to Moore's Mill. I think the staff would submit to you, and I know I'm not gonna have a lot of people in this room agree with me necessarily, but if that connection is made, there's gonna be more trips from Moore's Mill going to Big Creek than there's gonna be coming from Champions into Moore's Mill. And I think traffic studies have conducted will demonstrate that, and I think the reasons why are obvious. I also understand why the residents don't want to connect, but that's really a very key connection for the city to make. We've got, this is one of our key areas. If you look at the zoning map, the Prox map that's in front of you, you're aware of a fairly major residential subdivision to the south of this. All of that area that's particularly on that side of Hamilton Road, and we're even seeing stress on the other side of Hamilton Road for residential development. Those areas are going to need to develop, and as those parcels develop, they're also going to need to seek connections. And the more connections we have, the better off we are, the more the trips are distributed, the better off everybody is. That's hard to explain to someone who knows the connection's going to be next door to their house, and I understand that totally. But I'm just simply sharing what the city staff's perspective is and why it's a very important issue.
My feelings about it is, if you open that up through there like that, you're gonna have people taking shortcuts from I-85 through this neighborhood over there, and I know that the neighborhood is already, the street is already dangerous, so I know that from working as a police chief, it was a problem for us, and I'll tell you, one reason it sticks with me is, put an exit on Cox Road, and my dad's nearly gotten killed half a dozen times, traffic doing 80 miles an hour to get off the interstate. So these folks are gonna get off this interstate, and take Champion Boulevard, take a shortcut over here to Moore's Mill Road, and to me, it's just gonna be too dangerous for that neighborhood. And I know you know far more about this than I do, you guess it's your field, but I'm just saying from a common sense standpoint, I just think we ought to do something to keep opening this neighborhood up like that. But another big problem I got, and this is just from a public safety standpoint, is I like for every neighborhood, if I had my way, every neighborhood in Auburn would be one way in, one way out. That cuts down tremendously on burglaries. Yeah. And I'm afraid if you do this, you're gonna have burglars riding I-85, get off, take his road here, come back in this neighborhood and just tear us up over there. And I'm really, did you see where I'm coming from? I'm really concerned about that from that public safety standpoint and the speeding on from getting off I-85.
The alternate to that is that when you make connections, you may be increasing traffic, you're also quite frankly increasing visibility and activity on those streets. And I'll just share with you, and obviously these will be deliberations the planning commission's gonna have to deal with on Thursday, and bless them for having to do that. But I come from the land of gated communities and cul-de-sacs, and I can tell you when you constantly follow a path of development, the end results are not pretty. And what you have are incredibly clogged arterials, because that's the only place you've left for that traffic to go. So it's a trade-off. Those are decisions that have to be made, and you have to just understand the consequences of whatever that decision is that's chosen.
Jim, what about the potential, because there's another piece of property to the south that's rural, that abuts this neighborhood that ties into Bonnie Glen. What is the future look like for that area? And could that be the connectivity that comes back out towards Hamilton? And then the second part of my statement is the current piece of property in question, it would be known that you're tied into a CBD neighborhood from the beginning when you're a purchaser, whereas right now, these individuals bought into a neighborhood not expecting to be tied into a CBD neighborhood, and this connection would put them right into a commercial, corridor without something that they bought into and expected to happen. So two-part question, but the connectivity, could that down the road go into Bonnie Glen?
So the Bonnie Glen connectivity, at some point that is contemplated, I think we have a lot of, and Kevin can correct me, I think we're having a hard time trying to figure out who owns certain parts of that land so we can attain right of way to get, right now there's a dirt road, I believe, and it's small. And in order for us to, we don't have enough room to actually make it a paved road, so we have to get land on each side to pave it. And it's been difficult for us trying to obtain right of way.
If there were a crisis and that bridge were to go out and we weren't able to get to that portion of the neighborhood, can the city then use Bonnie Glen as an alternate route, even though we don't know who owns the road?
I mean, our first responders are going to use whatever's available, and they'll get there. It's not optimum. It may take them longer to get there.
There is a creek crossing that you'd have to go.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. But, I mean, they'll find a way. It's just how long it'll take them to get there.
Is there anything this council can do to stop this connectivity?
Really tonight, and that's why I advise council tonight, we're talking about the rezoning, but I think the deliberation, we can make sure that the planning commission understands the council's comments during deliberation on this. Because it is their purview for preliminary plat approval and that connectivity. That's specifically in the law, the purview of the planning commission, but we can make them aware of your concerns.
I would appreciate, I don't know about the rest of the council, but I would adamantly oppose putting a connection in there. I just can't see doing it to these folks. I just can't.
Jim, could you speak a little about the issue that we are to vote on here, and as this land use pertains to the 2030 plan?
So I'll let Forrest.
Sure. Yeah.
So that the citizens get a sense of what's going on in this particular.
Absolutely. In fact, this area of the city was not an area that we've conducted a specific focus area study on like we have for so many areas since the comp plan was adopted, but it was one that we examined pretty closely during the recent 5-year update. And so most of the properties on this side of Hamilton, recognizing the need to provide for additional residential growth opportunities in as most efficient locations as possible, went to low-density residential. You can see the subdivision that's currently under construction on Hamilton Road. That was fairly recently rezoned to DDH, so the property that you see on the side of Hamilton Road that this property is on, if it's in the county, one day it won't be. If it's zoned rural, one day it won't be. And DDH is the most appropriate zoning designation for all of that property one day, and that's the most appropriate zone that it's been identified as being in our comp plan. So the approval recommendation from the planning staff on the rezoning could not be more clear and supportable.
So there is an underlying land use, and that land use then has a zone on top of it, and so the consideration of the council is that an appropriate zoning use? Is that housing density, whatever, is that appropriate for that particular land use that has been identified in the comp plan?
On Champions Boulevard right now, there is a medical building there. Can you talk about, what the future is on Champions Boulevard in that area and how it would connect to this proposed neighborhood?
I think historically that at one time was considered it was going to be maybe even a hospital. There was some talk about a second hospital in our market, which there's the EAMC out at Opelika. I believe a bunch of doctors got together, wanted to create their own hospital and put it in that area. I think that fell through. Right now there is a heart specialist practice there. Several doctors have a heart. I don't know if there's, I'm sure there's still something that they want to do, but I don't know if nothing has come to us.
Just so it's clear too, I believe the outright get the zoning changed, and I'm for the change in zoning, but just as a side note, I do think it's wrong to open it up to that neighborhood back there and do that, those people pay good money for those homes and live back there. I just think that's a bad way to do it.
Yeah, we had a meeting last week with a lot of the residents from that neighborhood. There were at least 20 people that showed up, and obviously tonight there were a good amount of people that have come up and spoke, and I would strongly recommend that we do not have that connection placed back into that neighborhood.
And we can make sure that the planning commission is aware of that, of your comments.
Yeah, this is the problem from my perspective too on this is, the planning department or the planning commission are not easily swayed by emotion. They're looking at it in a different way, whereas these residents are totally understandably highly emotional about this. It's not what they saw their future being, and even them going to the planning commission to voice their concerns, as they have every right to do, and I would encourage them to do so. I think it's going to be a frustrating moment when it feels like they're not being listened to. And this has been an ongoing issue of citizens with this city, that they feel like they're not being listened to. And there is this argument about the greater good versus for the discomfort of the few. But if it continues like this, the greater good sometimes should be that this city should listen and respond to the citizens. And I would be in agreement with you, Steve. That's what I would like to see that happen to your life. So, and I encourage you to go to the planning commission and voice your concerns vigorously.
And I encourage the planning committee to go out there to that neighborhood. I've driven out there many times recently, especially during the campaigning season. It is difficult to see. There are cars parked throughout the neighborhood, and there's no sidewalks. And I can very well see this as a busy street with people just wanting to connect. And I hear your concerns, and I'm concerned for you guys if the connection is made.
Any other comments or questions, Council?
Totally unrelated, but I just was noticing, on this map, it shows the area that is White Oaks as CDD, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am, that is correct.
Okay, is that the proper use for that, proper zone for that area?
We have done, if you were to kind of go back in time, there were a lot of areas that were at one time kind of on the outer edges of the city, you know, back in the 80s and 90s, and those were all zoned CDD, because it's very permissive, and I think it was a way of appeasing people, knowing that the people that made that decision probably would never have to deal with it. So we have had some development. Camden Ridge is a good example. Camden Ridge was at one time all CDD, and we're able to work with the Connors to get that rezoned to DDH. We've had some discussions with the Ashton Lakes folks. We've got some CDD in Ashton Lakes. There's the prospect of getting that rezoned if the neighborhood's supportive of it, and if they're supportive of it, we would certainly be in favor of it at the staff level. And so this is another similar example where the developer acquired the property, they could develop it the way they wanted to residentially, so there was really no incentive on their part necessarily to rezone it, even though it may not be the most appropriate zone long-term. So when we